Alright, hey everybody. I want to talk with you about the basics of Flash. Now in this class, in the digital media or the 2D animation class, we're going to be using Flash to create frame-by-frame animations. That means that we're going to literally be drawing every single frame of the animation. So you have a 3-minute animation, that's going to be 3-second animation, that's 30 individual pictures per second. So that's going to be 90 pictures. I want to show you the basics of that so that you are able to get started with Flash. Now, when you open up Flash, this is Flash CC, you're going to open up to a splash page like this, and we're going to go to a new action script 3 here, and I'm going to click on that. When I click on that, it opens up a workspace. I have my main menus across the top. I have the name of the current project that I'm working on, which doesn't have a name at all. But if I went to File, to Save As, and I called this for my first Flash, and I'm going to save that to my desktop. I'm going to save it to my desktop, and it'll rename that as a .fla file. That .fla file is going to be a Flash file that you can open up with Flash. In the center of my workspace is the canvas. The canvas is where I'll be drawing or adding my content. That's what the camera sees, basically the camera eye. When I click in and around this space, I have the ability to open up or look at the properties. Over here in this area, I have different windows, and if I go to my Windows tab here, I can look at different different windows that can be opened. And one of them is the Properties tab. So I can go here, click Open Properties, and whatever it is that I'm using, specific tools like a brush tool or a shape tool, the properties for that will be opened. And when I look here, I can see FPS. That stands for frames per second. That means in 1 second of animation, it's going to push out 24 frames. Now I'm going to change that to 30 because we're going to be doing 30 frames per second. And I can change the actual size of my canvas. Now the size of my canvas is going to be the size of my actual animation that I want. And so when I do this, I want to refer back to my projects, whatever project guidelines that I have. So if I go to my actual class notes, I'll move the tab over here. If you go to the class notes and you go to project 1, you can find the actual project guidelines is 720 by 486. So 720 wide by 486 tall. So this provides you a new canvas size. That's how big the canvas needs to be. And the stage is the color of the actual background color. Now we're going to leave it white, just like it was a piece of paper, a traditional piece of paper. Now one of the nice things about Flash is that it keeps things registered, meaning when you're making animations, you have to keep your page lined up. So in animation, you had to have hole punches where you had the pegboard on the animation stand so that you could keep your pages aligned. So an animator would be working on something like this, where the piece of paper that you're working on is laid on top of a light box, and that is on an animation disc. Well, there are little tabs down here that align with holes, perforated holes, a circle hole and straight edge here, that holds each page in place. And so when you're doing that, that makes sure that the registration is lined up for the actual animation that you're going to be making. Well, Flash does that for us automatically, so we don't have to worry about it. Now the light that is underneath the page, like I showed you here, let me see here, allows us to see through the sheet of paper and to see the drawing that you did below it. The drawing that you did below it needs to be slightly different than the drawing that you have above it. Every frame needs to be slightly different. So if a ball is moving, frame 1 it would be here, frame 2 it would be there, frame 3 it might be here, frame 4 it might be here. So every frame represents some kind of change. And so as we begin doing this, we're going to pretty much create a traditional animation styled animation, but we're going to use the computer to help us keep it organized. Now, we're going to see that we need a few things to do that. First of all, we need a timeline. And the timeline is a place where we can essentially draw within the frame or on a piece of paper that we're going to be drawing on or using. So currently we're at frame number 1. Frame number 1 has a piece of paper on it. It looks like this. It's just this box. So imagine this being a transparent piece of plastic or a white page. What we're going to do essentially is line up image after image after image to show how the actual the drawings change over time. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to go into this little area up here, which is the layout, and I'm going to go into the animation layout, which changes the way all these little windows kind of are arranged. Now, you don't have to use this method. You can go to classic. The classic layout is the one that is the standard layout that I pretty much always use in class. So I'm going to go to classic, and it puts the timeline across the top. It puts my tools across the left-hand side, and it puts my properties and other attributes on the right-hand side. And so I'm going to leave it like that. Now again, if I click on this brown or this gray space outside my canvas, I can see that I'm using 30 frames per second. It's at 720 pixels by 486 pixels, and it has a stage color or a background color of white. And I can also go down here, and in my timeline, I have a variety of tools, little controls, play buttons, next frame, last frame, previous frame, and first frame. I can loop my animation to make it play over and over and over again. I can ping pong it so it plays to the end and then reverses and plays back to the beginning. Or I can change my frames per second here as well. Alright, so let's just run through a few things. On the left-hand side, we have a variety of tools to use. Now, for this particular animation, I'm making it very simple. We're not using pre-made shapes or anything like that. You're really going to draw everything. So you don't have to worry about what every single one of those tools do. You can explore that on your own. There's a bazillion videos about that. I'm just going to give you a few basics. The first one here is called the selection tool. This is going to allow you to select something on your canvas, like a line or a shape or the fill or an attribute like the anchors that allow you to adjust the curve weights. That's something you don't need to worry about right now, but it's something that you can do. There are transform tools that allow you to scale something, make it larger or smaller, stretch it in X or stretch it in Y, and you can change things like that. We'll demonstrate those in just a minute. Different types of selection tools, lasso selection tools that allows you to draw around a shape. But let's look at something that we can actually work with. I'm going to go down to this paintbrush tool, and this paintbrush tool allows me to basically put a stroke on my paper. Now, I'm going to call this my paper because what we're actually going to do is essentially stack a series of pages on top of one another. So here's, pretend a stack of paper. I'm going to lay down one sheet of paper, and I'm going to draw on that, okay? And then, so let me show you what I mean. Essentially, this is what we're recreating. I'm going to put my camera down on my desk. So I'm going to put down a piece of paper, and I'm just going to use a very sharp, I'm going to make a circle, okay? And then I'm going to essentially put another piece of paper over that, and so they line up. And because I can slightly see, you may not be able to see it, but I can see the actual circle here, I can make a variation on that, and I can change that slightly. So now I have two different locations. So you can see it here and there. And if I do it properly, you can kind of see how it slightly moves. So essentially, what we're going to do is just create a stack of pages and make them change over time, a little bit by a little bit. And if you were to flip them like so, you can begin to see an object in motion. So as I flip my page, I've only got 3 here, and if they're registered properly, you can see that the object begins to kind of move. You can see that one frame at a time. And so that's what we're going to do. So let me just show you that, and you can try this on your own. So you're going to use the brush tool, and you're going to go down to this paint bucket, and you're going to use, I'm just going to use black. I'm going to choose black with my little eyedropper. And I'm going to go here on my page, and I'm going to draw a simple circle. And I'm just going to use my mouse to do that. Now the mouse is going to then paint, essentially, a filled set of curves. I'm not using the line. I'm actually painting a shape. Now let me go back up here. So I'm actually just painting a shape. Now, I have currently only painted on one single page because I don't have any more. This timeline is not full of paper. It's just number 1, page number 1. It's essentially like trying to draw on a single page. But let me show you a couple things really fast. If I use my selection tool, I can actually select my object and I can click and drag it and move it around on my page. Notice that it leaves a little, oops, I'm going to hit Control Z. It'll show you where it was so that you can place it in a different spot. Now if I use my transform tool, I can actually change the shape of that by clicking or dragging in different directions. If I hold down Shift and drag, it'll scale it uniformly. And if I click and drag on the actual object edge, like on its actual edge here, I can move it around. Now, if I use the white arrow, I can actually change the components of my curve. So I can actually adjust the anchor points of the curve itself. So the reason that that paintbrush is saying it's a fill is because you have strokes with a fill inside of it. Okay? So I can either choose the whole object like I have here, or I can use the white and click on the object and change the actual things that make it up, its components. Now if I go back to my selection tool and click and drag on like the edge of it, I can actually change the shape by pulling out certain portions of the curve. And you can experiment more with that. And that could be actually a pretty interesting thing to do in time. I'm going to hit Control. I'm just going to select that, hit my delete button, go back to my brush or a shortcut of just B, and I'm going to draw a simple circle again with my mouse. Now, I like to use a stylus and a tablet. So I actually, when I draw, I'm going to use a stylus and a tablet. This is a Wacom tablet, W-A-C-A-M, I think. This is called a bamboo tablet. And when I draw, it's more like using a piece of paper. Well, it's more like drawing on a flat paper and using a pen. And if you get nice, expensive ones, well, they don't have to be expensive. You can get nice ones that have actual touch sensitivity. The harder you press, the thicker the line, and those kind of things. So one thing we want to be able to do now is draw this circle on a separate piece of paper, another one, so that frame number 1, it's in this location, and I put another piece of paper down, and then I draw on that. So this is what we have to do. We have to basically load our drawing area or our workspace with pages. So I'm imagining putting in 60 individual pieces of paper on which I'm going to draw on one at a time. So what I can do is I can go up to my timeline. I'm going to click in frame number 2, click and hold with my left mouse, and drag to frame 60. Now when I do that, it highlights those frames, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say convert to blank keyframes. When I do that, it makes a series of pages